The engines droned steadily, a deep, soothing hum that resonated through the cabin of Flight 327 on its journey from New York to Madrid. On board the Airbus A330 were 220 travelers, families, professionals, tourists, each eager to cross the Atlantic. The atmosphere carried the familiar sounds of a long-haul flight, soft laughter from children, the flicker of in-flight screens, and the occasional ping of the seatbelt sign. Among the passengers sat 16-year-old Emily Carter, a quiet figure in a plain hoodie, her brown hair tied back, earbuds tucked in. She seemed like any other teenager heading overseas, yet she carried an unusual background, nearly 120 hours of flight experience in small single-engine planes. At her hometown airfield, she had spent countless weekends learning to handle Cessnas with her instructor. For Emily, aviation wasn't just a pastime, it was her calling. Beside her, her mother Sarah leafed through a magazine, glancing up now and then with a protective warmth only a parent could show. Neither could have imagined that in just a few hours, Emily's love of flying would face a trial beyond anything she'd ever trained for. 2 hours into the flight, the captain's calm voice came through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're cruising comfortably at 35,000 feet. Conditions across the Atlantic look good, and we expect an on-time arrival in Madrid. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight." But mid-sentence, the announcement cut out. At first, passengers assumed it was a small technical issue. Then the seatbelt sign chimed unexpectedly, and moments later a flight attendant rushed down the aisle, her face pale, whispering urgently to a colleague who gasped before hurrying toward the cockpit. Unease spread quickly. Nervous glances passed between strangers. Baby began to cry. Emily tugged out her earbuds, her instincts kicking in. She knew from her time around pilots that something was off. 10 long minutes dragged by, with no word from the flight deck. The silence grew unbearable until finally, the lead flight attendant spoke over the intercom, her voice unsteady despite her attempt at reassurance. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We're dealing with a small issue on the flight deck. Everything is under control. Please stay seated with your seat belts fastened." But things were far from under control. Behind the sealed cockpit door, both pilots lay slumped in their seats, unconscious, likely struck by sudden food poisoning. The co-pilot had collapsed mid-sentence during the captain's announcement. Autopilot still held the plane steady for now, but no one knew for how long, or what would happen once it disengaged. In the cabin, the atmosphere thickened with fear. Some whispered anxiously, others began to panic outright. A businessman demanded answers from a flight attendant, but she only pressed her lips tightly together and shook her head, her expression betraying the fear she couldn't put into words. Emily's pulse thundered in her ears. Everything she had ever learned in her flying lessons, navigation, radios, emergency drills, flashed through her mind. She wasn't licensed, not even close. She had never set foot in the cockpit of a commercial airliner. But she knew one undeniable fact: autopilot wouldn't last forever. If nothing was done, 220 lives were at risk. She leaned toward her mother. "Mom," she whispered, her voice shaking, "something's wrong up front. If the pilots can't fly, maybe I can help." Sarah's eyes went wide. She seized her daughter's hand, her voice breaking. "No, Emily, you're just a teenager. This isn't a Cessna, it's a massive jetliner. You can't." But Emily's gaze told another story. Fear burned there, yes, but so did resolve. "If no one else steps up, I have to try," she pressed. Her mother shook her head, torn between terror and disbelief. "I can't let you do this." And then the intercom crackled alive. A flight attendant's voice wavered through the cabin. "Attention passengers. If anyone on board has flight experience, please come forward immediately." The cabin fell deathly still. People looked around, waiting for someone, anyone to volunteer. No one moved. The weight of dread settled over them all. Emily inhaled deeply, unclipped her seat belt, and rose to her feet. Every eye followed her. She looked impossibly young to be standing there, offering herself for the unthinkable task. But her voice did not falter. "I have flight training. I'm not licensed yet, but I know the fundamentals. I can try." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some scoffed. "She's a kid," one man muttered. But the flight attendants, desperate for any chance, exchanged urgent looks and motioned her forward. Sarah clutched Emily's hand one last time. Tears brimmed in her eyes. "Please be careful." Emily nodded and stepped into the aisle. The closer she got to the cockpit, the heavier the responsibility pressed on her shoulders. 220 lives, including her mother's, now depended on her. The door shut behind her, and reality hit. Both pilots were slumped motionless, warning lights blinking ominously across the panels. For a moment, panic clawed at her chest. But then she steadied herself. This wasn't about fear anymore. It was about survival. Sliding into the captain's seat, she adjusted the headset, drew in a breath, and pressed the transmit button. This is passenger Emily Carter. I'm 16 years old. Both pilots are unconscious. I've had some flight training, but I need help. Please, someone guide me. The cockpit reeked of stale coffee and tension. Screens flashed with data she barely understood. Compared to the simple gauges of the Cessnas she had flown, this sea of controls felt overwhelming, like sitting in a giant's chair. Yet this was no game of pretend. Every soul aboard depended on her. The headset crackled. Flight 327, this is Heathrow Control. We read you. Repeat your identification. Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out clearly. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 16. Both pilots are unconscious. I've trained in small single-engine aircraft only. I need assistance. There was a pause, a silence heavy with disbelief, before a calm male voice broke through. Emily, this is James Holloway, Air Traffic Control. I'll be your guide. You're not alone. We're going to get through this together. His tone firm, steady, reassuring, anchored her. She nodded instinctively. Okay, James. Tell me what to do. First, check if autopilot is engaged. Look for a button marked AP1. Is it lit? Emily scanned the unfamiliar maze of buttons until her eyes locked on the glowing green light. Yes, it's on. Good. That means the aircraft is holding steady. We bought some time. Next, confirm the type of aircraft. Airbus A330, she replied quickly. Copy that. You're in a big bird, Emily. But don't worry, we'll take this step by step. She glanced again at the pilots, checked their pulses, faint but still there. Relief mixed with dread. They were alive, but unconscious. For now, the responsibility was hers alone. A flight attendant lingered nearby, pale with nerves. Do you really think you can do this? She whispered. Emily tightened her grip on the yoke. I don't have a choice. If I don't try, no one can. Word spread fast through the cabin. Passengers leaned forward, whispering, praying, some shaking their heads in disbelief. A teenager flying a commercial jet. It sounded impossible. Back in her headset, James's voice cut through. Emily, listen closely. You don't need to master every system. You just need to follow me. First, repeat after me. Mayday, mayday. This is Flight 327 declaring an emergency. Emily pressed the button. Her voice trembled, but it was clear. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Flight 327 declaring an emergency. Perfect, James replied. Now you've got everyone's attention. We're clearing the skies for you. Just keep calm, keep breathing, and keep talking to me. Can you do that? Emily swallowed and nodded. Yes, I can. For the next hour, James guided her step by step, how to monitor altitude and speed, check the fuel, use the flight management system without getting lost in its complexity. Each instruction felt crushing, but Emily repeated everything back carefully, one task at a time. Outside the cockpit, the passengers sat hushed, straining to hear her voice. They could hardly believe it, a teenager sounding every bit like a pilot. Her mother sat frozen, eyes fixed on the closed door, praying silently while her daughter fought for every life on board. Sarah's lips moved in silent prayer, her heart torn between raw fear and aching pride. She had always known her daughter was relentless, but she had never imagined Emily's determination would one day hold hundreds of lives in the balance. Inside the cockpit, exhaustion tugged at Emily as the hours wore on, but she refused to surrender. Over and over, she reminded herself of her instructor's lesson. A calm pilot is a safe pilot. She whispered it like a shield against panic. Then James's voice returned, firmer now. Emily, we're setting you up for descent into Heathrow. You'll be aligned with runway 27L. It's long and wide, the best chance we've got. But the hardest part is still ahead, landing. I need you sharp. Her chest constricted. Landing a Cessna had been nerve-wracking enough. Now she faced the task of bringing down a 270-ton airliner. But she forced herself to answer, steady and brave. Okay, just tell me what to do. Good, James said softly. You've already done the impossible. Let's finish this together. Emily pulled her seatbelt tighter and adjusted her headset. The weight of 220 lives pressed heavier than ever on her shoulders, but she pushed the fear aside. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was their only pilot. Outside the cockpit windows, the horizon glowed orange with the last light of day as Flight 327 reached the coast of England. Clouds burned with sunset hues, the Atlantic stretching endlessly below. To most, it would have been a breathtaking sight. To Emily, it was the edge of everything, the line between survival and disaster. The radio crackled again. Emily, this is James Holloway. You're about 50 miles out. We'll begin descent soon. Are you ready? Her mouth was dry, but she forced the word out. Ready. Good. Until I say, leave autopilot alone. We'll bring her down step by step. Emily's eyes fixed on the glowing autopilot button. Her pulse quickened. She thought of her first lessons when her instructor had warned her that descent was always the most dangerous phase. Everything happened fast. And this was no small trainer plane. This was an Airbus A330 carrying hundreds of souls. People are counting on me, she whispered, hands trembling on the yoke. Begin descent now, James instructed. Set altitude for 3,000 feet. She did as told. The engines roared, the nose tilted down, and her stomach lurched as the massive jet began its drop through the clouds. In the cabin, gasps and cries erupted as passengers felt the shift. Sarah gripped her seat, whispering prayers. Some passengers wept openly, others squeezed armrests white-knuckled, and a few simply shut their eyes. Back in the cockpit, alarms chirped. Emily flinched, panic surging. Ignore those, James said firmly. That's just the system working harder. Stay calm. You're doing fine. She exhaled shakily. All right, Emily. We're lining up for runway 27L. Wide, flat, perfect for emergencies. Remember, gentle movements. Don't fight the plane. Let it respond. Through the haze ahead, runway lights shimmered like a path of stars. Sweat slicked her palms, but she clung to the controls. Okay, Emily. Disengage autopilot. It's your plane now. Her finger hovered. Every instinct screamed to leave it on. Autopilot meant safety. But autopilot couldn't land. She pressed the button. The jet jolted, and suddenly the controls were alive in her hands. The yoke felt heavy, sluggish compared to the nimble Cessnas she knew. The plane wobbled left, then right. She corrected, teeth clenched. Easy, James coached. Small movements. You're the pilot now. The runway loomed larger. Too fast. Too steep. Warnings blared. James, it's dropping too quickly. Pull back, just a touch. That's it. Hold it steady. The descent smoothed, though the cabin behind her rocked. Passengers screamed when the jet tilted, but Emily steadied it again. 1,000 feet, James said sharply. Gear down. Flaps full. Her hand shook as she lowered the gear. A deep mechanical groan filled the air as the wheels extended. Flaps stretched wide, slowing the descent. The runway lights now blazed directly ahead. All right, Emily. Line up center. No slightly high. Use the rudder pedals for tiny adjustments. Don't overthink it, just fly. Her knuckles whitened around the yoke. At 500 feet, the cockpit screamed with alarms. Sink rate. Sink rate. Her chest seized. She wanted to cry, to quit, to hand it all back. But she thought of her mother. She thought of every soul praying behind her. Failure was not an option. Almost there, Emily, James urged. Ease the throttle back. Hold steady. Let the runway come to you. The engines roared down. The jet shuddered, turbulence tossing her. Muscles burned as she fought the yoke. The ground rushed up. Flare. Now. James barked. Emily pulled back, raising the nose. The wheels slammed into the tarmac with a bone-rattling thud. The jet bounced, passengers shrieking. Emily gritted her teeth, corrected the angle, and brought it down again. Rubber screamed against asphalt. The plane was down. Reverse thrust brakes, James shouted. Emily shoved the throttles into reverse. The engines howled. The jet shuddered violently. The end of the runway rushed closer, but the speed began to fall. Slower, slower. Finally, with a grinding screech, the Airbus shuddered to a halt. Silence. For one breathless instant, no one moved. Then the cabin exploded in cheers, sobs, applause. Strangers embraced. Some collapsed with relief. Emily slumped forward, tears streaming, body shaking. Against every odd, every doubt, a 16-year-old girl had landed a jetliner. Her headset crackled one last time. James's voice, thick with emotion, came through. "Emily, you saved them all. Welcome home, Captain." The shriek of rubber against asphalt still rang in Emily's ears as the Airbus A330 rolled to a stop on Heathrow's runway. Behind her, the cabin had erupted into chaos. Tears, laughter, applause. Strangers clung to one another. Passengers clapped so hard their palms burned, while others sat frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend what had just unfolded. Emily remained in the captain's seat, rigid, her hands trembling on the yoke. For a long moment she couldn't move. She had done the unthinkable, landed a wide-body jet carrying 220 people, a feat that even veteran aviators sometimes feared. The radio crackled. "Flight 327, Heathrow Control." That was extraordinary. "Hold position, emergency crews are on their way." Emily pulled the headset from her ears with shaking hands, her chest heaving. A flight attendant touched her shoulder gently. "You did it," she whispered, eyes brimming with tears. "You really did." Emily glanced at the two unconscious pilots, still slumped over but alive. Paramedics would soon take over, but for now, the impossible had already been achieved. The cockpit door opened, and a rush of emergency staff poured in, firefighters, medics, airport officials. Cameras captured every second. Whether she wanted it or not, the spotlight had found Emily Carter. Her mother was among the first through the door. Sarah threw her arms around her daughter, sobbing so hard Emily could barely breathe. "I thought I lost you," she choked, words breaking into gasps. Within minutes, passengers were shepherded safely off the jet, but not without turning back. Many mouthed thank you. Some blew kisses. Others bowed their heads in quiet respect. Outside, flashing lights bathed the night sky in red and blue. Reporters had already descended, tipped off by chatter across aviation channels. By the time Emily stepped onto the tarmac, supported by her mother, cameras were rolling. Headlines went global within hours. Teenage girl lands jetliner, saves 220 lives. Miracle at 35,000 feet, 16-year-old pilot and training guides A330 to safety. From passenger to hero, news outlets scrambled to interview her. Aviation experts appeared on panels, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others marveling at what she had done. Everyone agreed on one point: Emily Carter had achieved the impossible. The following day, her name trended across every social platform. Hashtag Miracle Pilot and hashtag Flight 327 went viral. Clips of passengers cheering after the landing spread like wildfire. Messages of admiration poured in from strangers around the globe. At Heathrow, Emily sat wrapped in a blanket inside a quiet airport office, sipping water. She didn't feel like a hero, only exhausted. Her hands shook whenever she replayed the landing in her mind. She had been terrified the entire time, yet now the world called her brave. When reporters pressed for a statement, she finally stepped out with her mother beside her. Cameras flashed as microphones crowded in. Emily spoke softly, but her words carried far. "I'm not a hero," she said. "I just did what I had to do. I remember my training. I trusted the people guiding me, and I knew everyone was counting on me. I couldn't let them down." Her humility only fueled the admiration. Flight schools offered her full scholarships. Pilot associations sent invitations. Veteran airline captains wrote letters of praise. One message read, "You reminded us why we became pilots in the first place: courage, responsibility, and love for others." From her hospital beds, the recovering pilots made a statement too. "We owe our lives to Emily Carter. When we went down, she stepped up. That girl saved us all." But Emily was still just a teenager, 16, still in high school, still someone who liked music and movies and hanging out with friends. Yet overnight, she had become a symbol of courage. Weeks later, Her hometown airfield held a celebration. Her instructor hugged her tightly, tears in his eyes. "You always had the heart of a pilot, Emily," he said. Now the world knows it too. To Emily, it hadn't been a miracle. She had simply followed her lessons, leaned the voices guiding her, and refused to quit. But to the 220 souls on Flight 327, she was far more than a student. She was their rescuer. From that night onward, Emily Carter's name carried a new weight, the memory of a teenager who sat in a cockpit, stared down fear, and brought a jetliner safely home. Proof that sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms or medals. Sometimes they wear hoodies, tuck earbuds in their pockets, and wait quietly in the passenger cabin until destiny calls their name.